Welcome, Marcel. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for
Good
having me.
morning. Of course, of course. Before we start talking about architecture and design, could you please fill us in for those that don't know about FG&M and your role as president and director of design?
Sure. Yeah, so just a little bit about us. As you mentioned, it was started 1971, and
Mhm.
we are a firm headquartered in Florida. We have 7 offices across Florida, and we just started a Dallas office
Mhm.
as well. Um, and we have 3 branches in the office. One does public work. And I'll talk a bit more health. One does healthcare. One does custom estates. And so I really focus on the public branch of the firm, which is many libraries,
Mhm.
as well as education projects, recreation center, wellness centers, performing arts spaces, fire stations, anything that has to do with the community and creating a positive impact on the community. That's really what we love to do. We have a real
So
passion
anything
for
within
it.
that municipal envelope, really.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. And when it comes to library, that's a real passion of mine. I
Mhm.
just enjoy redesigning libraries, working with librarians, and working with the community. So we focus really on the impact on the community that the library has when we design.
Excellent, excellent. And do you have a special place for libraries? You mentioned those are the types of projects that you really enjoy working
Mhm.
on. What about a library that you personally can connect with?
Yeah, it's good. What I love about libraries is that it's really such an important part of who we are
Hmm.
as a community, and it's lately has been really the sort of misunderstood importance part of our community. For a long time, it was a place for books, and that's what people associated with. Mentality that people forget that it's not a place of just books, it's a place of knowledge,
Hmm.
it's a place of sharing, learning. It's a place of community too. People come together, whether it's
Exactly.
children, adults, older people. Everybody comes together, and it has to be a place that's accessible for everybody. I just love how librarians are always the first ones to embrace changes.
Hmm.
And that's really something that's very important, and that's what makes it fun too. When we work through the programming and pre-design of a library, it's always a fun part because we talk about aspirations, we talk about what's going on now,
Hmm.
what's going to happen in 20 years and 50 years, and creating that flexibility to open up possibilities for the community, but also learning about the community is important. And what's great about libraries is that it's not just one mold fits all. It has
Right.
to be custom to the community. So it's a lot more pre-planning, pre-design, and design as well to
Hmm.
really figure out what is that library that speaks to this community and that will create the sense of community that people can come together there. And
Hmm.
it's not just a place too that just internal. It's also very external, right? Think about like, oh, the place for the books inside is about the spaces inside, how they come together, how they flow, but also how do they flow to the exterior spaces, and how can we create that connection and engagement, with the exterior, extending the library outside has been really something that we've been really focused on, especially in our recent libraries as well.
Right.
Is how do you extend that to the outside? And so people, there might be a reading porch outside, right, that people come to.
Hmm.
We just did that on the Wesley Chapel Library. Design a reading porch that has a place for the community to come, and there's an event. There's a lawn in front of it where people can come picnic
Hmm. Oh,
and
wonderful.
benches to sit on and grab a book, sit outside when it's nice, in
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah, I mean, those
Uh,
are all wonderful, really kind of philosophies behind
mhm.
the design aspect of libraries and what you're looking for. I know in especially in recent years, there's been talk about evolving library spaces, and you kind of just touched on that in the sense that it's not just the interior, but it's also the exterior, and combining those two,
Mhm.
having them work together, because the library obviously, it's as far as its reach, it's certainly much more than just within the confined spaces of the building itself. It's outward as well, outreach and
Mhm.
so on, all the different activities the libraries put on. Many times those go outside the boundaries of the building, and so looking at the space on the exterior is important.
Right. Yeah. And another aspect too that's very important is the flexibility nowadays, and both inside and outside. But
Hmm.
yeah, we're working right now on the library in Clay County that it's going to be probably the most flexible library that we've
Hmm.
ever done. Everything in it is flexible, can be reconfigured, so it gives that flexibility to create different types of programming. So the flexibility part is important.
When you
Okay.
talk about flexibility, you're talking about the flexibility of being able to have, for example, mobile shelving,
Yeah.
no real fixed furnishings or
Yes.
stacks and so on. Is
Yeah,
right, right.
exactly. So
Okay.
all this has to be, pre-planned. It has to be thought out ahead of
Hmm.
time. Because we also have to think about the technology, right,
Hmm.
aspect. That's an important part of a library too. And so thinking about how to create this grid of technology that allows you to create that flexibility, right, in the space.
Right.
And that's another aspect that, is also misunderstood. And we just want to put, power everywhere and, like, as much technology, but just being thoughtful into how do we create that flexibility and thinking, because we have to be conscious of budgets too. So we can't just
Exactly.
put all that in there. So and
Right.
and that's also part of, one of the reasons too. Obviously, there's a community evolving, but there's also the budget aspect, thinking about the flexibility in the space.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, one space can do, five different functions, and some of them
Exactly.
could be at the same time.
Right, right. Let's back up a little bit
Mhm.
and talk about the topic that we have at hand today, which is preparing for such a project and preparing for those design features and so on, and what libraries can do to do that. What does early planning mean for you as the architect on a project?
Mhm. And so libraries, it's they're an investment in the next generation.
Hmm.
So, it's important in the early planning to think about the goals of the project,
Okay.
not just today, but also, in 20 years from now, what does that mean, right?
Hmm.
And so the goals are important. Understanding the constraints that you have to work with is important in the early
So
planning phase.
budgetary, uh,
Budget, schedule,
schedule,
um, the
space.
site space. Yeah, what site do you have? We've worked in some where it might be an existing building that you have to renovate. It might be a place where it's a very tight space where you
Hmm.
only can build so much. It might be a green space. Understanding the constraints that you have to work with. Um, and also understanding the decision-making process. We've had some projects where we've went along in the early planning and in the design process, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we designed something, we love it, and then we forgot. Well, now we have to present to the commissioner because the commissioner has, and that commissioner was not involved in the process, and
Hmm.
we have not learned from the commissioner. So then, she had different ideas of what the library should be, and so we kind of have to take a couple steps backwards. So
Hmm.
understanding the decision-making process and what are the stakeholders that need to be involved and for what in what capacity as well. Not everybody has to be involved for every single decision. Some are more about the functionality, some are
Hmm.
more obviously about the budgets, some are about the aesthetic, some are about the programs that you'll have in the libraries. So understanding the goals, constraints, and the decision-making process, those are very important in the early planning.
And also with the stakeholders, you certainly want to get them on your side early on.
Mhm.
So creating those connections, reaching out to your network of people within that stakeholder community is incredibly important because you do want to bring them in early so that they have a sense for what's coming down the line as far as decision making or planning on their ends. And that could be,
Mhm.
like you mentioned, it could be commissioners, it could be library boards, it could be even foundation boards and people very much interested in the library. So even before you bring on a firm like yours, you're really talking about starting a network and really a schedule of activities that need to happen in order for you to set yourself up for a future project.
Yeah. And to your points, you want to have buy-in from everybody. So,
Hmm.
gathering stakeholder inputs is critical. Budget is also another one, understanding the limits of the
Right,
budgets.
right.
One thing I'll say about that is that, a lot of time, a lot of times the librarians, they don't get to build libraries every day, right? Or
Right.
every year.
Hmm.
We've been in some communities where it was their first library in like 20 or 30 years. And
Exactly.
so it's important to understand the limitation of the budgets too and the funding.
Hmm.
And so talking to the right, whether it's architect or contractors to get an idea of what we have available, what does that mean? If you can gather $10 million, what does that get us? Um, but if you also deal with an existing building, assessing the existing condition is very important too. Thinking about, um, you know, when you think about renovation,
Hmm.
as soon as we start opening up walls, we find a lot of hidden secrets in there.
Right.
So having a proper assessment of the existing facilities being done,
Hmm.
it'll outline on everything that you need to know about the building. They may do some selective demolition, just look inside the wall to check things out,
Hmm. Right.
especially if you don't have an existing building plans. Libraries have been built before the 60s or even before the 70s. They usually don't have that many plans available.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. I just recently finished a webinar and I always put content out there about understanding and knowing your library building's history.
Mhm.
And that being the responsibility really of the library and the assigned person, whether that's the director or assistant director or branch manager, but really understanding what the history has been up to the point where you up to the present, really. And that including gathering documentation, for example, the building plans, as-built plans, inspection reports, all of these different things, so that when librarians are ready to undertake a major project, they are ready to really give you as the architect a full picture, or at least as best they can, a
Mhm.
picture of what has transpired, what has that building experienced through the years. And that way you can get a better idea of what you're up against, right?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. As much as you can find out about the existing building
Hmm.
from plans that you can find from history. We did a project that was a historic school that burned down after Hurricane Irma, and there was no plans because it was built in 1906, by the community, and
Sure.
but we found postcards. old postcards. One of my business partners collects postcards from
Uh-huh.
old historic postcards. And so he had those postcards of, with images of that school. With all, so we had to replicate the details on the exterior, which are
Hmm.
very elaborate details, to so that we can bring the exterior back to what it was and then celebrate the history of it. So anything you can find, postcards even.
Right, exactly. Even such a
Hands
thing as
on.
as a small postcard
Yeah.
can give you not only the inspiration, but also actual, features that you may want to highlight in the new construction.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing too that they mentioned is to go visit other libraries outside of
Hmm.
your
Hmm. Get an
um,
idea for what's out there and
yeah, yeah. So one thing that we do at the beginning of every project is we do a benchmarking tour, is what we call it.
okay,
So we go visit other libraries,
right.
in other counties or other states,
Hmm.
sometimes just to get ideas of like what could be, right? So, I'm not saying like everything works, right? We'll hear some lessons learned too sometimes. They might say, hey, we've we felt this and then we designed this way, but then this doesn't work for us. But it could work for them, right? So just going
Exactly.
there and getting some ideas. It's a great way to get out there, speak to other librarians, and understanding what could work and not work for your library.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. Part of a building project really is not necessarily reinventing the wheel every time. It's
Mhm.
it's it's using existing conditions, existing features, existing designs really, and and adopting those, not copying them, but adopting the premise of those and the essence of those so that you can, so that you as the architect don't have to reimagine anything necessarily from nothing. You
Mhm.
have a point of reference, really, where to go from.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's a great way just to open up, your mind to of what could be done and
Uh-huh.
you know, the
Yeah.
possibilities. I always talk about possibilities, right? Don't think about your library, what you have today. Think about like what could be done in this one that we have not done before. And
So in preparation for a project, having librarians or whoever's in charge of that project or the group go out and look and experience other libraries, take notes, take pictures, video, so that they can then give you a picture of what they would like to see in their construction project and the features and so on. That would help you tremendously, I'm sure.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So there's always talk about whenever librarians and library projects are in play, there's always talk about the word programming, right? Programming for librarians means something a little bit different than it does for architects. It's often heard, but maybe not fully understood. Can you explain to our audience what does programming involve, again, from your perspective, and why is it so critical to project success?
Yeah, that's interesting because there's a couple words that we use in the design side, and they mean something completely different in the library world.
Right. That's exactly why we're here,
Yeah,
right? To
yeah,
educate and
and
so on. So go for it.
the which a recent conference that us was talking about, the spaces and programming, and so I had
Hmm.
the same question, and I was talking also about circulation, and
Right.
which means something different in the library world, and the
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
circulation for us means the space for people to walk through,
Hmm.
the corridors and things like that, versus a circulation desk and the circulation of the library
Hmm.
books. The programming for us is really about defining the spaces that you need. So when we say we create a program, means the list of spaces that you'll have in your library.
Hmm.
So the programming exercise that we go through at the beginning of a project, what's for us, especially at FG&M, is that it's a very intense um, 1 to 2 month process
Okay.
where we
You're talking about
defining the
defining the
spaces.
spaces,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So we work
Okay.
with the librarians. They usually have an ideas like, we do have to have, this space and that space.
Hmm.
And also a lot of time you have also outside stakeholders that have some input as well. For example, we have one where um, the people in the government wanted to make sure that they have a place for senior lunches, the
Hmm.
library, and also the voting room in the library. The programming means that we go through this process through this collaboration with the librarians to figure out the list of spaces, all
Hmm.
the spaces required, and obviously we start with the main spaces. So you may have the main reading room, children room, multi-purpose rooms. Then there's additional spaces like study rooms, um, friends of the library if you have
Sure.
those. And then there's all the support spaces that we got to figure out too. And then that's where everybody always forget is that you do have to have a properly sized workroom,
You do.
break room for the
Hmm.
staff. The staff is, very critical to the library. So understanding the flow of the spaces and what spaces they need.
Hmm.
Um, there's also all the back of house stuff that nobody looks at, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all
Right.
that stuff.
Right.
So all that becomes part of that list that we call the
Hmm.
program.
Hmm.
And
I
that
was going to
gives us,
mention, I'm sorry, I was going to mention storage being such a big thing
yeah.
as well in back of house. A lot of a lot of projects don't take that into account, the amount of storage that is actually needed,
Hmm.
because even you talked about the Friends of the Library. The Friends of the Library, they have a bookshop, and that bookshop needs to be sorted. So
Hmm.
the materials that are out for the public to see are maybe a fraction of what they actually received. And that could be maybe the public sees 10% of materials that were donated. The other, you know, 80, 90% of materials don't ever make it out for public sale because they were, say, for example, water damaged, or they have, they're too old or whatever. Point being that the amount of material that's coming in can be significant at times. It could be, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 boxes of material at one time. So storage being a very important part of library operations.
It's not just books either. For example, if you have a meeting room or multi-purpose room, you have to
Mhm.
understand how much storage you need for it.
Right, tables and chairs and
Yeah.
AV equipment.
Exactly. So usually we program that, and then as we develop the layouts, and then we
Hmm.
start to figure out based on number of tables, chairs, the types of chairs, types of tables, how can we fit them to the storage room? Is it a children room where you need, storage for the different activities that you have in the
Right.
children room? What is that? What is the capacity? What is the type of storage? So all that has to be figured out, by the architects.
Hmm.
So so don't, the librarians not have, they have to know that they have to have storage, understand the storage, but the architect should be the one, helping figure out what is that size, that works for them. You may have some kitchenettes too for the multi-purpose room as well.
Hmm.
You also have restrooms. You got to have those. And the program usually, so it starts with a list of spaces, the square footage that you need, and then we typically have some notes on um, any special condition for the spaces,
Hmm.
adjacencies to, figure out what's the flow of the spaces in the building too. Because as we get into the next phase after programming, then we can start to play with, what we call the little bubbles, the bubble diagrams.
Right.
So we
Right.
place the different spaces, look at the flow. But if we don't get it right in the programming, it makes it much harder, right, in that process. But the other part that's very important is to understand the demographics too.
Hmm.
What's the size of the community? What's the demographic? Is it, young parents with a lot of young children? Is it more older parents with teenagers? Is it more older population? Is it a mix? So what I ask librarians usually at that stage is what is the demographics? Do you have nearby schools as well?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because that helps us to define, the size of the spaces. And then for them, it's up to think about the programming as well. So then that influence a little bit, that also influences the size of the spaces. How much circulation do you need in
Hmm.
the when I say circulation this time, I mean books.
Uh-huh.
How many books do you need in the
Right.
library, in each room? That varies per demographic, per community, per size of the community as well. And so we use a mix of formulas that we've developed over the years to figure out the sizes, but at the same time, learning the communities during the community engagement too is
Hmm.
important, and that comes into place. It's usually a mix. So there's not like a that's the hard part I think about libraries is that there's not a magic formula to figure out the size necessarily. It's a mix of formula and also engagements with the community to figure out, what's the right size of the library, what's the right size of the children room versus the adult room.
Hmm.
We've designed libraries that were next to a school, and so the children room was the same size as the adult room, right? So it's very
Oh,
large.
interesting. Sure.
And also figuring that out. We've learned over the years that we used to do dedicated story time rooms,
Uh-huh.
but those, when you have younger children, younger parents with younger children, um, that they're always too small. So what we figure out is that might
Right.
as well have them part of the children room and having the flexibility in the children room to reconfigure.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of the time they use the meeting rooms as well because
Right. Right.
it's so much demand on those depending on the demographics.
I'm sure people really want to know, how do you deal with competing priorities and opinions? Some are political, some are budget oriented, and so on. When you come upon a project, I'm sure you've experienced that quite a bit.
Yes, that happens pretty much on every project, to
Hmm.
be honest.
Hmm.
We even before we are hired, a lot of time there's already competing interest in the library. People have different visions. The commissioner have different vision than the librarian
Right.
has different vision than some of the stakeholders, and the community has different vision. So what helps, and the librarians are very good at engaging with everybody, especially the community. They're really great at it. It's so you have to hear from everybody, and whether it's through different forms of engagement, sometimes just meetings with stakeholders, and with the community, we do different activities
Hmm.
where we ask questions, and they tend to be more broad questions to learn about the community, but also hear their aspirations, their visions of their community with a library, what that means. And so once you have all those, um, we filter them through different categories,
Okay.
and those categories then we becomes a priority. Um, but you have to understand and filter what some of them mean sometimes. Like a coffee shop is a great example
Uh-huh.
too, but
Uh-huh.
it's about the coffee, is a lot because, we think about like the Starbucks, people go there with a laptop, their coffee, and they just hang out
Exactly.
for a couple hours. And so it's understanding what did they mean by some of those, so we can turn that into a priority, a
Hmm.
goal,
Hmm.
um, and then translate that into a realistic, interpretation. And so, and we do that throughout the process where um, we figure out those, and then we start to figure out what does that mean in realistic plan,
Hmm.
design, and budgets too. We got to figure out what, what can we
Right.
work with. And then we show that to the community and we show them how that what they told us translates into the design.
Hmm.
What is the
Hmm.
community, the commissioner, and it's a great way to get buy-in from everybody. Because if they can see that they are part of the process,
Exactly.
that you listen to them, you may not have listened to like every single thing, but you've translated those conceptual ideas into something concrete
Hmm.
and possible. You get buy-in into the design, and everybody gets excited about it.
So even though you might have competing priorities or competing, yeah, priorities and opinions, what you try to do as an architect is go to a project and really synthesize the comments from those different groups and prioritize those and take
Mhm.
those higher level priorities into account and bring that together within the whole list of
Yeah,
priorities, right? Okay.
exactly.
What are some of the most common misconceptions that libraries and librarians might have entering into a renovation and expansion or new construction?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First, I would say that sometimes people think design can start right away,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
this is why we're having this podcast today. That there's a whole pre-planning part so we can define the goals, and then we can jump into the start designing. Um, we sometimes when I start a project, that I have people tell me right away, "Oh, I don't like this type of wood. I don't like this type of stone," and then we're not there yet, right? We
Hmm.
have to figure out there's a process, and our process in our case tends to be a little bit longer. The programming and the visioning tends to be like a 1 to 2 month at least,
Okay.
depending on the project. Um, but once we do that, we'll go through that. Then we start designing, and that process is a lot smoother than
Hmm.
us jumping right away and start designing and sketching, and then later we find out, what we did, what doesn't work, as we find out more about the library and the community. So really, um, defining the goals and the program is critical before jumping into the project itself.
Hmm.
Another part that I see a lot is people think renovations are cheaper than new construction, which is a big
Right.
misconception. Of course, it depends on the type of renovation that you do. It depends on the type of building that we're dealing with. And so evaluating that is important too. Sometimes, renovation are so extensive to make it work that it might just be um, better to just have a new construction. And the other part too is understanding, and that's more of a pragmatic thing, but understanding what the budget covers. It's not just the construction aspect. There's a construction of the building. There might be the sites if it's new construction. But then you also have all the soft costs. You have, of course, the design costs, our fees. You have furniture.
Hmm.
That's an important part of it, especially in the library. In the libraries, furniture is such a critical component. So
And that's including stacks as well, correct?
yep, including the book stacks, and then you have the
Right.
circulation too that you have to buy
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
it's a new library. You have the contractor's cost as well, and so you have all those additional costs that a lot of time you don't think about. And I always recommend to have a good contingency on the budget too.
What typically do you recommend as far as contingency is concerned?
So it'll vary. And so what you'll see through the design is that the first cost estimates will have a higher contingency because it's so early. There's a lot of
Hmm.
details to figure out. And as we go through the design process, contingency will start to, go down. But it can vary from 2% to 5% the
Okay.
cost. It's going to be
Right.
higher, I would say higher if it's a renovation project because it's
Hmm.
just a lot of unknown. The set
Exactly.
opening of the walls and then find things. If it's new construction and you don't have as much site work.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
things always happen during construction, so I always say be very careful and mindful of that. Operation of the library,
Hmm.
understanding that, especially as you design a new library, or if you renovate and redo completely an existing library, and you design it and you have some ideas of like the new flow or the new process, new operations that can
Uh-huh.
happen there, making sure like you train to your staff to understand that. What was happening in a few instances is that we have the librarian that's going to manage the library part of the design process, and she has some very clear idea of, what should be there and how things would go. And
Hmm.
but then she made, in one instance, as soon as the library opened, she left. And
Oh, yeah.
the new library manager, she had her own different ideas of things. So,
Hmm.
and so training to understand like how to operate the library
Right.
to the best possibilities.
Yeah, and that point you bring up a great point about continuity within the agency that you're working with. So, and a lot of that has to do with, proper facility management and understanding where the building has been, where it currently is, preparing for the future, and making sure that whoever comes in to lead the project, having some continuity and some consistency within the agency is critical.
So that continuity is important,
Mhm.
and because there's so many discussions that happen during the design.
Right.
We keep a record of everything, and we give that to the librarians and the clients all the time. But there's just so much that happened, and what we found even during construction, as things starts to go up, then you start to think, hey, why did we make this decision, right?
Hmm.
And so it's going back and saying, okay, here's why we made this decision, and that was the
Exactly.
best because we thought about different options, and this was the best solution for this.
Well, it's been exciting talking to you, Marcel. I really appreciate you being here with us today and really giving us some of the insight into the preparation for a major library project.
Well, first, thank you for having me
Of
here. I really
course.
appreciate it, and yeah, I think just last tip, architect is there to help you. So of
Hmm.
course you have to make sure that it's an architect that has experience in library design. But we're here to help. We love collaborating with librarians. So it's a great process to be involved in, and always think about what is your library going to be in 20 years from now, 50 years from now.
Thank you, Marcel, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.